Now, I'm sure you've seen it. Someone takes a drag of cannabis and then they hold their breath, their face slowly turning red, maybe even tearing up. Does holding your breath even matter? Before we look into this, please leave a like, a comment, and if you want to, consider subscribing. Whether you vape or smoke cannabis, the first thing you'll do is inhale it. Smoke or vapor will travel down your windpipe, through the bronchial tubes, and deep into your lungs, reaching tiny air sacs called alveoli. Your lungs are incredibly efficient at gas exchange. This is because the alveoli have extremely thin walls, just one cell thick, and are surrounded by vast networks of tiny blood vessels called capillaries. When the cannabinoid-rich smoke or vapor reaches the alveoli, the cannabinoids rapidly pass through the thin walls of the alveoli and directly into the bloodstream flowing through the surrounding capillaries. This transfer happens very quickly due to the large surface area of the lungs and the direct access to blood circulation. Once in the bloodstream, the cannabinoids quickly are transported through the body and a significant portion travels to the brain. Inside the brain, the THC primarily bonds to cannabinoid receptors, specifically the CB1 receptors, which are part of the body's endocannabinoid system. This system plays a crucial role in regulating mood, memory, appetite, pain perception, and more. Binding of THC to CB1 receptors disrupt the normal functioning of this system, altering neurotransmitters released and leading to the various psychological and physiological associations with cannabis, e.g. the euphoria, altered sensory perception, relaxation, changes in coordination, increased appetite, red eyes. Great, now we know how cannabis gets into our brain through the lungs, and from what we've discussed, it makes a lot of sense. The longer you hold the vapor or smoke in your lungs, the more that can be absorbed into the bloodstream and the higher you'll get. But what does research actually say about this? Well, the earliest research I could find was by Zacny and Chait in 1989. Research whether holding your breath after inhaling cannabis affects how strongly you feel the effects. 8 regular cannabis users took part in 9 sessions, where they smoked under 3 conditions, holding their breath for 0 seconds, 10 seconds, or 20. Everything else was kept controlled, the same number of puffs, the same amount of smoke, and the same breathing patterns. Heart rate, carbon monoxide levels, memory, and how high the participants felt were all measured before and after smoking. Interestingly, the same 2 researchers did a similar study around 3 years later. They had 10 regular cannabis users smoke both real and fake, a placebo cannabis, with and without holding their breath for 20 seconds. Both studies, they found while holding your breath did increase how much carbon monoxide was absorbed, it didn't make people feel any higher. Great, so holding your breath doesn't boost the effects of cannabis. Whoa there, slow down, we want to be critical on things like this. Firstly, the studies are old, THC blood levels were not measured, and without this blood data we can't be sure how holding your breath actually affects the THC absorption. Also, small sample sizes, meaning it's difficult to generalize the findings to wider populations. Annoyingly, there's not a lot of modern research on this topic, but I did find a fascinating study by Zhao and Feng was done in 2021. Researchers wanted to find out whether holding your breath after inhaling cannabis actually increases how much THC your body absorbs. It's difficult to measure this in real people. They use advanced computer simulations. They built 3D models of human airwaves and simulated how THC vapor and particulates move when someone smokes. A side note, this is really cool, this is really impressive. They tested 2 common puff styles, one with a short, shallow inhale, followed by a long breath hold, and the other with a longer, deeper inhale and the same 10-second breath hold. Here's what they found. Inhaling deeply made the biggest difference. A longer 4-second inhale carried THC further into the lungs, especially in the lower regions, where absorption is faster and more complete. Holding your breath did help, but only if the inhale was deep. If the puff was short or shallow, holding your breath didn't make much of a difference because the THC never reaches the right areas of the lungs. And finally, the simulation showed that the size of the THC dose had the biggest effect on predicted blood levels. Larger dose led to higher THC levels in the body regardless of the puff technique. Again, we want to be critical. No real humans were used in this study, and that means that real-world variability in lung conditions, usage styles, or THC metabolism weren't fully captured. Human airways vary a lot based on sex, age, health status, smoking history, and 2 models can't represent that level of complexity. Also, the high and the therapeutic effects of cannabis are heavily influenced by psychological and environmental factors such as context, expectations, tolerance, mental state. These are all things that a simulation can't fully replicate. So what do we even take away from all of this? Well, at the moment, deep, steady inhales seem to be far more important than long breath holds. Holding your breath may help a little bit, but only if you've already taken a proper, deep inhale that brings the THC vapor or smoke into the lowest part of the lungs, where it can be absorbed effectively. So if you're using medical cannabis or recreational and want to maximize the effects of each dose, especially if you have limited access, maybe focus on how you inhale and not just how long you inhale for. Also be mindful that the strength of your cannabis will also play a big role in this. I think it's also important to be mindful that if you choose to hold your breath, especially if you're smoking, to be mindful that this can cause additional damage. When you smoke cannabis, you're not just inhaling THC, but you're also inhaling combustion byproducts like tar, carbon monoxide, and other irritants. If you take a long breath hold after smoking, you're not just holding in THC smoke, you're also holding harmful chemicals into your lungs. And this may be something to be mindful of if you smoke. It may be better to get a vaporizer. But if it's something you've always done and you feel comfortable doing it, then who am I to tell you what to do? And again, the take home from this is if you smoke or vape cannabis, it might be more effective to focus on taking a long, deep inhale and consider the strength of your cannabis rather than holding the smoke or vapor after each puff. Welcome to the ramble, and again this is just a small segment at the end where I just kind of verbal diarrhea my thoughts, feelings, and just own interpretations of the field that we've just discussed. Now, this whole thing about holding your breath after taking a hit, it's funny, isn't it? It's one of those things that you just see people do and assume that there's logic behind it, and again, the logic is almost there. It makes a lot of sense. To get the THC from my lungs to the brain, it needs to be held into my lungs. It doesn't seem to be the case. And I think what's fascinating about it is that cannabis culture is just a mixture of, I guess, tradition and things you learn from, I guess, other people. As you're definitely not learning it in school. Well, I guess some people might be learning it in school, but not academically. But yeah, from an academic perspective, you don't ever get taught. It's not in very many books, I guess. Like, you see it all the time in media, and that's, I guess, where I learnt it from originally, is you see someone on the TV or a movie and they take a hit on the bong and you see them take a big and then they hold their breath and then they're coughing and spluttering, and you just think, well, if that's how it's done, then that's how it is done, and that's how it always has been done. And yeah, it's just kind of a loop, and you don't actually kind of break that loop and learn more until you kind of, I guess, dive into what actual literature is saying about the topic. But on the flip side, I guess some people need that ritual. They need that, I guess, almost physiological feedback of coughing and spluttering to go, I just took a hit. It was a good hit because I'm still recovering from it 5 minutes later, so I should feel high almost immediately, or I will feel high soon, and that's fine. And I just want to state that this video is definitely not me saying that this is wrong and you shouldn't be doing it. It's more about just providing information to be like, actually, this thing that we all thought was a thing may not actually be much of a thing, but you can do other things to improve how high you get. I think the obvious one is get stronger cannabis, which makes a lot of sense. But actually taking that initial long inhale to inflate the lungs, make sure the cannabis vape or smoke gets to the places in your lungs where it needs to be, to then be effectively absorbed into the bloodstream. I think what's really interesting about this research is that it's actually very easy to replicate. Not the whole 3D simulation one. I'm not saying go and now generate a whole 3D airwave model. Absolutely not. But if you've got cannabis, you can experiment with it and see if actually taking a long, deep inhale actually works. And I'd be really curious to see what people's experiences of that actually is. And in general, there's a lot of talk about puff styles, and it sounds a bit strange saying it out loud, but I think that's pretty interesting, and actually how just changing one simple thing, e.g. the puff style, can actually have potential big impacts across your cannabis experience, and that's really interesting to me. Anyway, may not be interesting to anybody else, but this is the ramble, so But yeah, I think that's where I'm at this one, and I think again it's just that kind of working out what's best for you and sort of learning about there's other options to do things that could actually help you. And again, that's what this is about. You are your own best researcher, and you know yourself the best, so do what's best for you. But yeah, thank you so much for listening to the ramble.